What's going on, everybody? Jared Sandler here, getting ready to provide you with another Rangers 2020 season review, as well as a preview of the offseason and beyond. We've done the starting pitching. We've done the catching position. We've discussed first base. Right here, I want to discuss second, third, and short. It didn't make sense to do those positions individually because there's so much overlap and a lot that kind of intersect. So we're going to discuss those three positions together. At the end of this, we're going to discuss options with Elvis and Rougie, because I think that one of the big storylines going into this offseason is how the Rangers are going to approach those two individuals and what their future roles might or might not be with the ball club. So we'll do that. So we're going to go through each of the players who were a part of the big league infield or those spots this year who could be a part of it moving forward. So sorry, Andrew Romine. Sorry, Derek Dietrich. Appreciate your service, but probably not guys who will be a part of things in the future. I guess maybe you could say that Derek Dietrich could come back if he was willing to take on a similar role and maybe not even be guaranteed a major league roster spot. We'll get into what might happen this offseason in terms of free agency in a second as well. But I want to start with this. I want to present some optimism and some excitement. And we're going to have to be patient. It's not going to happen in the next few months. We're probably 14, 15 months away. But the free agent class, not this offseason, but next offseason, is absolutely loaded. And it's loaded specifically at the shortstop position. And there's no question that the Rangers are open for business when it comes to their shortstop of the future. Maybe it's one of the guys internally, but there's certainly not that one stud guy you're like, we're clearing the way for him. These 5 shortstops become free agents after the 2021 season. Francisco Lindor, Javi Baez, Carlos Correa, Corey Seager, Trevor Story. Francisco Lindor, probably not going to happen. I imagine he ends up, in New York or LA, the bright lights. I don't know the Rangers' stance on Carlos Correa and the ties to the Astros. I'm not sure. No doubt this guy's a special talent. They'd probably do some due diligence on the character as to whether or not they'd want to invest there. I know that in the past, he's a guy that, every team liked, but I know the Rangers liked him. Corey Seager's got ties to Chris Woodward. Is he a shortstop long-term? I think that's a fair question to ask. Javi Baez, I guess I don't really know one way or the other where he might end up or, will he stay with the Cubs? I'm sure, they're kind of at a crossroads, whether they want to break up their core. Maybe he's a guy they'd want to keep. The guy who I think would make a ton of sense, and the guy who I think would have interest in coming here is Trevor Story. He's local, and not every local person, not every local athlete wants to play for the local team. I've had conversations with people who have said that he would love to play in Texas, and it seems like the Rangers could be a great fit there. Great character guy, speed, power, defense. To me, he might not be the biggest household name on that list. To me, he is the best player right now on that list. I don't know what it's going to be a year, 2 years from now. Obviously, a lot can change, but right now, he's the best player on that list. I take him over Lindor. I take him over Baez. I take him over Seager. I take him over Correa. I think there's a legitimate shot, and I will be championing the Bring Trevor Story to Texas campaign. But wanted to present some optimism, something to look forward to. All right, let's start with Isaiah Kiner-Falefa. Really bright spot, one of the big bright spots from this year for the Rangers. A chance to win a Gold Glove at third base, played shortstop very nicely, and he in this particular season was reliable offensively. Not a guy who's going to hit for power, below average slug, below average OPS, but a guy who hit around 300 and had, in general, good at bats. What's his role moving forward? Well, I think he needs to play every day next year to learn more about who he is offensively. The Isaiah Kiner-Falefa the Rangers had this year, if let's say there's no improvement, this is who he's going to be year after the year. he's probably not a starting player on one of the 4 best teams in baseball because of the lack of production from a slug standpoint offensively. If you look at some of the better lineups in baseball, he's your 10th guy. And those guys are important. You know, there's nothing wrong with that, especially with how good he is defensively. But he made a big jump from last year to this year. And I don't think there's any reason not to believe he can't make another jump this year to next year. You know, all he needs to be is around league average OPS, and he is a big-time positive player because what he brings defensively. So he's going to play every day next year. Where? It's a great question. And the answer might be everywhere, at least all 3 of the positions that we're discussing right now, third, short, second. Why might he not be an everyday third baseman? 2 reasons. 1, I think shortstop's up for grabs. 2, Josh Young, whether he's with the team come opening day or shortly thereafter, will likely get a lot of time at third. Second, because, again, I think that spot's up for grabs. Isaiah Kiner-Falefa will play. He'll play every day. Not sure where. Let's get to Nick Solak. We're going to talk about Nick when it comes to the outfield group as well. But I think there's a good chance you see Nick Solak play second base. I think that second base, to me, is going to have a rotating cast of characters. You could see Nick Solak. You could see Izzy. You could see Danny Santana when he is healthy and he comes back. Anderson Tejeda, if he makes his way back up, you could see him there. I think you've got some options. And Rougie as well. We'll get into Rougie and Elvis, though, here in a little bit. Nick Solak's still trying to figure out where he fits best defensively. A lot of people still believe it's left field. You need Nick Solak to be an average defensive player, but he's also got to hit more. Nick, again, was he unlucky? It seems like it. There were a lot of pieces of data out there that suggest that, over the course of 162 games, he really would have benefited greatly from the extra games and seen his numbers uptick. But regardless, if you're going to be a guy in a lineup on a team that, we're looking at this like the next wave of really good Rangers teams. If you're going to compete for a playoff spot, a division, more than that, and you don't make a team better defensively, you sure as heck better make them a lot better offensively. If you're going to be a DH, you're going to have to be, a really good offensive producer. If you're going to, not be a DH, but just, again, kind of be a placeholder defensively, you really got to contribute. And for Nick Solak, his OPS has got to be about 200 points higher, moving forward to fit that threshold than where it was this year. Good at bats, quality at bats, no doubt, willing to use the whole field. I think that there's something there. I think that, Nick Solak is a good player. I think we all believe that, but we got to see more from him offensively, defensively, second base, left field. I don't know that he's going to be great at either of those spots, but I think that's where you'll see him play next year in addition to perhaps DHing. All right. Anderson Tejeda. He's one of those, the 5 guys who hadn't played above A ball who played for the Rangers this year. I think that he will and needs to spend some time in double or triple A next year. And if the Rangers don't even see him at all at the big league level, I don't think that's some big failure. He's super young. He's got some growth, work he needs to do. I imagine you'll see him at some point because he's going to be on the 40-man roster. And, when injuries or opportunities present themselves, you always look to the 40-man first. But I'll give you 2 stats that kind of tell you what you need to know about Tejeda, who has a really bright future. Heck of an arm, needs to be more consistent to play short. I think that because of his arm, he could actually turn into a real asset in the outfield. Or as we've heard people talk about with the way second basemen are used, whether it's playing on the left side of the infield against right-handed hitters or playing in short right field against lefties, arm strength is more important for a second baseman nowadays than it used to be. But he walked about once every 40 plate appearances. That's not going to cut it. That is well below the major league average. And he struck out about once every 2.5 plate appearances. That's a guy who's going to strike out 200 times a year. The plate discipline was not there for Anderson Tejeda this year. And that's what he's got to work on. And it's not a surprise. I mean, you got a young guy who hasn't seen competitive pitching, and we've talked about this before, competitive advanced pitching, AA and above. He hadn't seen any of that, and he gets thrust into the big leagues and having to deal with that because of all the circumstances. Again, just to put it in perspective, the major league average this year, plate appearances per walk, 10, 10 to 11. Anderson Tejeda was at 40. All right, plate appearance per strikeout, around 4.25. Anderson Tejeda was about 2.5. So he's got work to do there. Danny Santana, I think you could see him at first. You could see him DHing. You could see him in the outfield. Second base, I think it's also a possibility coming off of his arm surgery. Because of the arm surgery, I'm not as confident in saying you could see him at short or third because that could be more taxing on the arm. But then again, if you're going to see him in the outfield, then you very well might see him on the left side of the infield. It might not be right away, though. They might want to ease him into it. But he's a guy who, I think they're going to find ways to get him in the lineup, and they're going to take advantage of how utilitarian he is with the ability to do multiple things. Josh Young, again, has not seen competitive pitching, only, stuff below AA. So you might see Josh Young go to camp next year with a chance to compete for a spot, but with the likelihood that he starts in AA or AAA. But I do expect to see Josh Young at the big league level by June 1st, and I think you'll see him play a lot of third and a little first. Sherten Apostle, I think he's more in the Anderson Tejeda camp than the Josh Young camp. I think you see Sherten Apostle, who can play both corner spots in the infield, start the season in AA or AAA, and then get, a chance to come back up to the big leagues at some point. But, whereas with Josh Young, I said by June 1st, I don't think that timeline necessarily would apply to Sherten. All right. That leaves us with Elvis and Rougie. Elvis is to about a little over 15 million the next 2 years, so a little over 30. Rougie around 25 total, or a little over 12. Neither of those contracts are going to be easy to move. If you want to designate them for assignment, no one's going to claim them on waivers and just take on that contract, especially a year in which teams, I imagine, if not all, close to all are going to cut payroll. So then you're going to be paying those guys to play elsewhere. Now, it might be a bullet you're willing to bite with Elvis. You consider the Rangers' mentality. It's about the youth. It's about giving young guys a chance. Well, Elvis does not fit that category at all. He's north of 30 and appears to be declining. Elvis will turn 33 in August of next season. He's currently 32 years old. Whereas Rougie, and you might be fed up with him, you might be at your wit's end with him. He's still young, and that Rougie's 26 years old. Both guys are going to need to be open-minded to changing what has become the norm, or getting used to something different. Typically, though, with a guy like Elvis, who has established himself, multi-time All-Star, more than 10 years as this club's everyday shortstop, you're asking them to change their role. Sometimes it's best if maybe that role is changed elsewhere, so they don't have the backdrop of what used to be as a reminder every single day. And if you're going to, move forward with the youth movement, and Elvis thinks he can be an everyday player, then again, it might be that the marriage between the Rangers and Elvis is no more. Now, how are they going to do that? You're going to have to get creative. So there's definitely a chance that the Rangers bring Elvis to camp and go from there. I don't know. It just seems like if you were to ask me which guy, Elvis or Rougie, is least likely to be a Ranger on opening day, I'd say Elvis, and I would say that would happen this offseason. Could Elvis learn different positions? Sure. He could learn third. He could, play the outfield perhaps. Does he want to do that? I don't know. No matter what, for both Rougie and Elvis, if they want to learn different positions, that's great. It might be necessary. They got to hit better. Doesn't matter where they're playing. Elvis had a sub 600 OPS this year. All right, maybe it was the back. All right, give him a pass. Well, his OPS the last 3 years has been in the 600s. So, combined. And same thing with Rougie. Obviously, he's shown flashes. Rougie's shown upside that Elvis perhaps hasn't over the last 3 years. But, Rougie still, overall, the numbers aren't where you'd want him to be. Now, this is the first time. This year was the first year in which he finished with an OPS below 720 since 2017. But Rougie still, if you want to look at the last 3 years, is not giving you the type of offensive production you'd like. OPS 722 and then on base below 300. That's where the issue really is. The lack of on base due in part to a lack of batting average. Rougie could learn third. He's got the arm for third, maybe an outfield spot. I think ultimately what happens is Elvis is elsewhere. It seems like that might be the outcome that makes the most sense. And Rougie is going to go to camp. with a chance to earn playing time at second, but not be guaranteed even that. I don't even think he's going to go to camp as the favorite. I don't even think he's going to go to camp on equal footing as other second base candidates. He's lost the degree of trust, I think, with just the lack of consistency. He's going to have to go above and beyond to win that job. Otherwise, you might see, Rougie as a platoon player, maybe a guy who, is a utility player if he is willing and able to pick up different positions. I just think it's going to be tough to get rid of both contracts. Maybe you can get rid of one. Maybe you can bite the bullet on one. You certainly can't do it with both. And I don't see two teams taking on those contracts this offseason. So at least one of those guys will be a Ranger, and my guess it would be Rougie. As far as free agency, if you look at it, let's just try and put players in place on opening day. Let's say Josh Young starts in the minors. So you have, is he at third? Or is he at short? Someone else at third? Solak at second? There seems to be perhaps a gap there. I could see the Rangers maybe adding a one-year veteran for, the infield, a guy who maybe plays regularly when the season starts, but when Josh Young's ready, maybe he doesn't. Someone who's okay with that sort of a role. I think the Rangers would likely make some sort of a move there this offseason just to bring in some depth at the short or at the infield spot. Someone who could play short, but also play a little second, a little third. All right, there you go. That's our second, short, and third review and preview for 2020 and moving ahead. I think that this portion of the roster is a really interesting one with how they choose to proceed this offseason and then how it carries over into the subsequent offseason with those guys that we mentioned becoming free. I appreciate you hanging with us. More Rangers baseball content for you coming up here in the coming days and weeks and months as we bridge the gap between the end of 2020 and the beginning of 2021. Until next time, stay safe and be healthy. We'll talk to you later.